Hi, welcome to A Push with Lennox, and today in our journey in U.S. history, we are going to explore the relationship between the colonists and the Native Americans, specifically the colonists in Virginia. Now, I know you probably think you already have a really good understanding of what went on between the Jamestown colonists and the local Native Americans. Well, I hate to break it to you, but this is a myth. And though Disney did a fantastic job with their storytelling, and I highlight storytelling of Pocahontas, we're going to get a little bit more into the reality of it. First of all, let's meet the characters. Now, this is the John Smith you might be familiar with, and maybe not from Pocahontas, but there was another movie that came out called The New World, and Colin Farrell played John Smith. Now, you can already see a difference evolving there. Also, another main character in Pocahontas is going to be John Rolfe. And, well, I got to be honest, I like this casting. Here's John Rolfe, Christian Bale in The New World. Not bad. But let's look at the reality. Here is the actual John Smith and the actual John Rolfe. Got to admit, I like the movie versions a little bit better. But we really need to focus on reality. And with regards to Pocahontas, this is the real Pocahontas. Now, one thing I want to throw out there real quick. We all know the story of John Smith and Pocahontas and how she risked her life to save him from being killed by her father. Keep in mind, Pocahontas was about 11 years old when she first met John Smith. And there is a real possibility that she participated in a ceremony that John Smith might have interpreted as, man, my life's in danger and this little girl just saved me. But I gotta assume that an 11-year-old Native American is not going to be drawn to a 30-something-year-old English explorer willing to risk her life. I'm just saying, my opinion. We do know parts of Pocahontas' story from when the colonists arrived. Actually, what happens to Pocahontas is she is going to become a captive of the English colonists, and she's going to be taken back to England, where she's going to be introduced to religion, and she's actually going to be baptized in the Christian church. Now, she will meet John Rolfe, and they will marry, and that's going to have a significant impact on the relationship between her tribe and the English colonists, but I'll get to that here in just a second. Now, initially, the relationship between the Native Americans and the colonists was one based on economics. The Native Americans, the Powhatans, they were, like I said, the Confederacy in the area. They were becoming reliant on English goods, and the English were becoming reliant on the Native Americans to help them survive. Well, that economic relationship is going to shift to more of a hostile relationship as a foundational settlement is built, as tobacco is introduced, as more and more colonists start to come in. The very first sign of hostility is going to be the first Anglo-Powhatan War. There were 3 different wars between the English and the Powhatan Confederacy. The first one went from 1610 to 1614, the second one from 22 to 32, and the third one from 44 to 46. So you can see these wars extended over almost a 35-year period. Now, it's the first war that Pocahontas plays a key role because of her marriage to John Rolfe. That's going to help usher in a peace between the Powhatan and the English because there's that kinship tie now. The guy who's leading all of this is Opechancanough. Opechancanough was the brother of Chief Powhatan. Now, when his brother dies, he takes over as the tribal chief of the entire Confederacy. He never saw a peaceful relationship as a possibility between the Powhatan and the English. But with the marriage of Pocahontas to John Rolfe, you're going to see a period of peace, almost 8 years long. However, during that 8 years, you're going to see the growth of the tobacco plantations. And the more success they have, the more English colonists start coming over to North America and moving into Powhatan territory. So that's going to spur the Second Powhatan War, which goes from 1822 to 1832. 10 years this war lasted. Now, what got it started, or I guess the catalyst that started this war, is going to be the Indian Massacre or the Jamestown Massacre of 1622. Now, this is an English interpretation of that massacre, and it's very important that you understand point of view when you look at things like this, because there is a underlying goal in the creation of this picture. Please notice that all the Native Americans hold weapons, and they are attacking everyone, men, women, and children. Notice also that hardly any of the Jamestown settlers have weapons. It looks like they were just enjoying a peaceful meal when the natives came in and attacked. Now, this was a massacre. The natives did attack Jamestown, and a lot of people were killed. But there is a tone in this picture. And the tone is the savagery of Native Americans. And that's the tone that wanted to be, exploited, and that's the tone that wanted to be shared throughout the world. That these Native Americans were savages, and they needed us to come in and either help them become more like us or push them out of the way. Now, peace will be restored at the end of the Third Powhatan War with the death of Opechancanough. And this peace is actually going to last until Bacon's Rebellion. And if you're not familiar with Bacon's Rebellion, I suggest you go back and watch my video on the southern colonies, because we actually address the relationship between the natives and the settlers that's going to lead to Bacon's Rebellion. But we are going to see, what is that, a 30-year period of peace that will exist between the natives and the English settlers. The results of this war, basically the Anglo-Powhatan Wars ended with the Treaty of Middle Plantation. And what that treaty did, set up reservations. It set up a specific area of land that was going to be available or open to each tribe that was part of the Powhatan Confederation. It gave them the hunting rights, not only on their reservation, but I also believe it allowed for hunting rights outside of their reservation as well. So they weren't actually tied to this reservation. Not that they would understand what that is, but they are promised this certain amount of land. If you guys go out there and leave the rest for us, it'll all be good. Now, the English settlers, they won these series of wars, and there's a whole lot of reasons why. I have the 3 Ds right there: disease, disorganization, and disposability. Disease, just like with the Spanish, and we saw it with the French too, disease is what weakened the Native Americans the most as English, Europe, or for that matter, all European settlers came in. The Powhatans were no different. They were hit hard by disease, so that's going to weaken them in the fight. They were disorganized. They were a confederation of a lot of different tribes. I have them listed there at the bottom. You have the Potomac, you have the Chesapeakes, the Chickahominies, the Nansemons. Say these names, they're not that easy. But anyway, it was a confederation of a lot of different tribes, and they weren't as organized as they should have been to actually take on the English. All right, so that's what resulted from this war is the Treaty of Middle Plantation with the Powhatan Confederacy. All these tribes going on to quote a reservation, but in this sense, it's more of a big plot of land that's been set aside, promised that we won't expand on it. When we look at the Native American relationships in New England, kind of the same idea. Now, in New England, though, we have different tribes. It's the Algonquin Confederacy. Now, the Algonquins were, an Algonquin that's the language they spoke, and it included the Wampanoags, the Narragansetts, the Mohegans, the Pequots. And when the Puritans and the Pilgrims came in, they actually saw these English colonists as possible allies. There were a lot of tensions between the Algonquins and other Native American tribes in this region, so they looked and said, this is a potential ally, someone who can fight with us. And why they got that idea, look at 1620s, when the Pilgrims arrived and they formed that bond with Massasoit. You also know him as Squanto. And then you also had people like John Eliot come in, who, though it was never an English goal to convert Native Americans to Christianity, he was a missionary, and he went out to the natives and he shared his faith, and he actually set up praying towns that were set up for Native American Christians. So there was a real understanding when you look at the New England Native Americans that, man, maybe we can all just get along. However, the same thing that happens in Virginia is going to happen up in New England. The Puritans have more and more people come in, and that's a lot due to the Great Migration that was occurring. And as more people came in, they wanted to expand their territory, and that's going to increase tension between them and the Pequot tribe. And that's going to lead to another Native American war, the Pequot War of 1637. And it's primarily the Puritans versus the Pequot. However, there are some alliances that are going to be built between the English and the Native Americans, specifically with the Narragansett and the Mohegan. They were the natural enemies of the Pequot. So, you hear the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Same thing is going to happen here. The enemy of the Pequot, the Narragansett and the Mohegan, are going to become the friends of the Puritans. One of the big events, and we'll look more at this in class, is going to be the Mystic River Massacre, where a village at Mystic River is going to be absolutely demolished by the Puritans and their Native American allies. And it pretty much, what's going to result out of this war, the Treaty of Hartford will be signed. And in that treaty, the Pequot Nation is dissolved, basically gotten rid of. Fortunately for us today and for America, the Pequot have made somewhat of a comeback, but the actual Treaty of Hartford dissolved that tribe. The last thing I want to talk about with regards of Native Americans in New England is King Philip's War. Now, this is going to happen in 1676. That's really right around the same time that Bacon's Rebellion is happening down in the Virginia colonies. So if you're creating a timeline, Bacon's Rebellion was 1675, 1676. King Philip's War, 1675, 1676, right around the same time. King Philip, his actual Native American name is Metacom. He was part of the Wampanoag tribe, same tribe as Massasoit. But now the relationship is not what it was back in 1620. He is going to try to form a Native American alliance against the English, bringing all these different tribes together to fight and try to push the Native Americans back. King Philip, that was his English name, said, "I am determined not to live until I have no country," meaning he's going to fight until he either has a country and the English are gone or he's dead. His alliance included the Wampanoag, the Nipmuc, the Pocumtuck, and the Narragansett. And this fight is going to take place over several years. It's going to be the bloodiest war on American soil per capita ever. Ever. More lives were lost based on the population than we saw in any other war, including the Civil War. Now, this war is going to end, and the Confederacy is going to fall apart, and all we're going to do is we're just going to keep pushing the Native Americans further and further west. Bottom line, with regards to the Native Americans, the English colonists' goal was to come in and make these colonies profitable. Even the colonies in New England that were based on religious freedom, there was still that underlying tone of mercantilism. That's why the English allowed these colonies to be formed. And the Native Americans got in the way of our economic growth. And while while the Native Americans tried to fight, while we tried peaceful solutions as well with treaties were never honored, fights continued to break out. But because the Native Americans had been so decimated by disease, they were just too weak. And even when they formed confederacies like we see with King Philip and King Philip's War, the confederacies never lasted. They generally fell apart because they had different goals. Each tribe had their own goals. So this is just a brief overview of the relationship, and you're going to see as we study throughout history, this relationship is going to evolve. You're going to see the same ideas, though, are going to continue on as we expand the 13 colonies, and then as we expand America, and then we go through Manifest Destiny. The idea with the English, like we've seen with, we saw with the English, with the Spanish, it was, follow me. You do what I say. I'm your leader, you follow me. With the French, it was lead me. Help me make the most out of this, area here. Help me glean from this geography. But for the English, and later for the Americans, the idea is get out of my way. Just stay out of my way because we're going where we believe we have the right to go. All right, that's about it. Hope you learned something, and as usual, if you didn't, just rewind and watch it again. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.